The heat of the late afternoon hangs heavy over the undulating golden grasslands of southern Africa, a vast silent canvas painted in ochre and amber. Through this sea of whispering stalks, a low, rhythmic rumble begins to rise. It is the steady, earth-shaking thrum of a herd moving as one. We smell the sharp, sweet scent of dry grass trampled underfoot, mingled with the warm, musky scent of hide and damp earth. These beasts are not merely livestock, they are the heartbeat of a people. Long before they were conquerors, the Zulu were but a modest clan of the great Nguni migration, arriving in this fertile cradle during the 16th century. To these pastoralists, cattle were the ultimate testament of prosperity, a living currency so deeply woven into their soul that their language blossomed with over 300 words to describe them, distinguishing the precise shade of a hide, the curve of a horn, or the gentle sway of a flank. In this quiet age, life revolved around the Umizi, circular family sanctuaries nestled like rings of woven grass upon the hills. Their gates faced strictly to the east, welcoming the first golden light of the rising sun, a daily blessing of warmth and renewal. Here, in the gentle agrarian rhythm of the morning breeze and the lowing of the herd, we find a world of profound peace, a quiet dawn before the thunderous storm of empire building would rewrite the destiny of a continent forever. That storm did not begin with the clash of massive armies, but with the quiet, desperate footsteps of a mother and her child. We see her now, Nandi, her face etched with the bitter dust of banishment, clings to her young, illegitimate son as they trudge through the shimmering, punishing heat into the foreign territory of the Mthethwa. Cast out, carrying only the raw instinct to survive, they walk. But time is a patient, ruthless sculptor, and under the relentless sun, the outcast boy grows. He rises, towering a full 6 feet tall, a colossus of muscle and unyielding resolve. Yet Shaka's true genius lies not in his formidable stature, but in his rejection of the past. He watches the traditional warriors throw their light spears from a distance, a bloodless hit-and-run dance of war. And he sees its weakness. To throw your weapon is to discard your power. Instead, he births a revolution forged in fire and iron. The iklwa, a short, brutal stabbing spear, named for the sound it makes as it is torn from an enemy's chest. The soundscapes of African warfare shift. The distant, echoing shouts of old battlefields dissolve into a terrifying silence, followed by the frantic, hot breath of hand-to-hand desperation, and finally, the wet, heavy thud of iron tearing through flesh and bone. In this close, suffocating embrace of death, an empire is born.
But an empire cannot be forged by raw, chaotic violence alone. It requires a mind that can master the chaos, a vision that can turn the bloody desperation of hand-to-hand combat into a symphony of absolute conquest. Shaka looked upon the disorganized, ritualistic skirmishes of the past and saw a canvas waiting for a master's brush. He would not merely defeat his enemies, he would consume them. From high above the sun-drenched savannah, the terrifying geometry of this genius unfolds, a lethal blueprint carved into the very earth. This is the Isichwe, the horns of the bull. As our camera descends through the shimmering heat haze into the choking red dust of the valley floor, the terrible symmetry comes alive. On the far flanks, the horns, swift, light-footed young warriors, sweep outward in a silent, predatory arc, enveloping the startled enemy before they even comprehend their doom. The air grows hot, thick with the smell of dry grass, sweat, and the sharp, metallic tang of rising panic. Then comes the chest, a crushing wall of seasoned veterans, driving forward with heavy oxhide shields locked, their short Ikwa spears thirsting for the strike. And yet behind them, hidden in the tall, whispering veldt grass, the loins wait in reserve. They sit with their backs turned to the field, deliberately shielding their eyes from the fury of the onset to keep their blood cool, their hearts steady, until the perfect moment to deliver the coup de grace. Beneath the rising smoke, the earth itself begins to tremble. We hear it before we see it. A low, thunderous vibration rattling the ribcage, the rhythmic, synchronized stomping of thousands of feet on the baked, unforgiving clay. It is the heartbeat of a new superpower. As we contemplate the sheer, terrifying brilliance of this ancient martial art, we are forced to wonder how such discipline could rise from the dust. If these echoes of the past resonate with you, consider subscribing to join our journey, and leave a comment below to share your thoughts on the dual nature of such devastating genius. For in understanding the shadows of our history, we find the light of our shared humanity.
And it is in those very shadows where the true, agonizing cost of that genius is laid bare. For the brilliant spark of Shaka's military mind did not just illuminate the dawn of an empire, it ignited a firestorm that swept across the face of southern Africa. Look closely at the landscape, once vibrant with the lowing of cattle and the laughter of children, now reduced to silent, charred ruins. The bitter wind howls through hollow, abandoned kraals, carrying the faint, acrid smell of cold ash and long-dead fires. On the horizon, columns of dark smoke smudge the sky, a grim testament to the advancing tide of Zulu power. This was the Mfecane, the crushing, a cataclysmic shattering of nations that forced tens of thousands of desperate souls to flee their ancestral homes. We see them, endless, shivering streams of refugees, clutching what little they could carry, struggling over the jagged, frozen passes of the Drakensberg Mountains. Yet, even from within Shaka's inner circle, the cracks of division began to splinter. Mzilikazi, a fierce lieutenant and rival, could no longer bend his knee to the king's absolute, terrifying will. Breaking away with his loyal faction, he carved a path of steel and survival northward, crossing the high-veld grasslands to eventually lay the foundations of a new destiny, Matabeleland in modern-day Zimbabwe. Back in the heartland, Shaka consolidated his absolute rule, forging a monolithic state from the broken fragments of the defeated. Conquered tribes were not merely spared, they were absorbed, their young men conscripted into the strict regimental Amabutho, forced to march to the relentless drumbeat of a single, absolute master. This drumbeat echoes loudest within the formidable timber walls of the Ikanda, the vast, isolated barracks villages where the young Amabutho are stripped of their past and forged into a singular, devastating weapon. Here, far from the warmth of family hearths, the scent of wood smoke mingles with the sharp tang of sweat and damp earth. Under a cold, unforgiving dawn, we witness the solemn threshold of boyhood's end. Young, trembling initiates stand in absolute silence, flinching but refusing to cry out as sharp bone awls pierce their flesh in the collective ear-cleaving ceremony, marking their transition into the king's service. Once marked, they are adorned in the striking sensory opulence of their regiment. Crimson lorry feathers and snow-white ostrich plumes catch the biting wind, swaying above rows of stiff cowhide shields. Look closely at these shields. The young recruits bear dark, heavily patterned hides, while the senior veterans carry shields of pure, blinding white, a visual hierarchy of courage and survival. And rising above them are the married men, distinguished by the polished, circular beeswax headrings, the isikoko woven into their hair. It is a symbol of hard-won honor, a crown earned only when the king himself grants them the ultimate reward, the right to marry, and finally to become men in the eyes of the nation.
But this hard-won peace, this deeply ordered world of honor and ritual, is about to collide with a restless, encroaching force advancing from the south. The dry, dusty air of the Highveld begins to carry a strange, foreign sound. Not the rhythmic thud of bare feet or the steady beat of Zulu drums, but the agonizing groan of iron and wood, the incessant rhythmic creak of heavy bore ox wagons rolling northward from the Cape. The scent of sun-baked canvas, dry sweat, and parched earth trails these trekkers, families seeking a homeland, unaware of the storm they are about to unleash. At first, there is a fragile, deceptive quiet. Under the blazing African sun, the Boer leader, Piet Retief, enters the royal compound of King Dingane with a delegation of 70 men. They are invited to feast, to drink beer, and to sit in the shade of the royal kraal, leaving their weapons outside in a gesture of mutual trust. But the air is thick with unspoken dread. Suddenly, the illusion shatters. With a single, devastating command from Dingane, the peaceful compound erupts into a nightmare of swirling dust and screaming men. Retief and his followers are seized, dragged to the rocky hill of execution, and brutally put to death. This act of betrayal ignites an apocalyptic firestorm. On a cold, misty morning in December 1838, the clash reaches its boiling point. The Boers draw their heavy gunpowder wagons into a defensive circle, a laager, bracing for the onslaught. The sulphurous stench of gunsmoke soon fills the damp air as thousands of brave Zulu warriors throw themselves against a relentless, fortified wall of lead and fire. By dusk, the waters of the Nkome run red with the blood of the fallen, warning its dark, eternal name, the Battle of Blood River. The unmatched might of Zulu courage is shattered against the devastating power of gunpowder, fracturing the kingdom into a bitter civil war between the weakened Dingane and his opportunistic half-brother, Pande, leaving a once united nation divided against itself in a tragic struggle for its very soul.
But while the children of Shaka bled upon their own soil, fractured and weeping, a quiet, chilling transformation was unfolding just beyond their borders. The focus of history was shifting, turning away from the ancient rivalries of the veldt and into the cold, calculating grasp of imperial ambition. Beneath the dry, sun-baked earth of Griqualand, the soil itself whispered a new and dangerous secret. Look closely. Deep in the grey, coarse dust, a rough diamond catches the light, glistening like frozen fire. It is a deceptively simple stone, yet its cold spark would ignite a conflagration that would consume the subcontinent. Almost overnight, the scent of wood smoke and damp earth is replaced by the dry, stifling air of candle-lit colonial offices. Here, the temperature drops, and the only sound is the rhythmic, scratching hiss of steel nibs on parchment. In these shadowed rooms, British officials bend over heavy mahogany desks, deliberately weaving a tapestry of deceit. They knew King Cetshwayo's kingdom was peaceful, but peace does not fuel empires. With calculated strokes of the pen, they painted the Zulu nation not as a sovereign neighbor, but as a ticking time bomb, a savage menace poised to plunge the region into blood. It was a calculated lie, designed to justify an unprovoked invasion, all to secure a desperate, endless supply of cheap, broken labor, to lay the iron tracks of railways and strip the suffocating depths of the diamond mines.
But those who orchestrate wars from distant, polished offices in London rarely calculate the unyielding spirit of the homes they seek to conquer. In the heat shimmer of January 1879, under the shadow of the sphinx-like crag of Isandlwana, British arrogance met its devastating reckoning. At first, there is only the sharp, rhythmic crack of modern Martini Henry rifles, a deafening wall of lead echoing off the mountain's steep, rocky face. But then the gunfire is swallowed, drowned out by a low, terrifying rumble that vibrates through the very soles of the soldiers' boots. It is the rhythmic, thundering war of 20,000 Zulu warriors running on foot, closing the horns of the bull around the doomed column. The dry African air fills with the copper scent of blood and the acrid sting of black powder, as the British line is utterly shattered and swept away. Yet, as the dust settles on that colossal defeat, the tragedy of Isandlwana bleeds into a desperate, legendary stand just across the river at Rorke's Drift. Here, a mere 140 redcoats, huddled behind a fragile, chest-high wall of mealie bags, face thousands of relentless Zulu attackers. The night is thick, suffocating, illuminated only by the frantic orange glare of a burning wolf and the flickering, desperate glow of candlelight inside a makeshift hospital. In the suffocating dark, amidst the screams of the wounded and the smell of burning thatch, the defenders claw through their rapidly depleting ammunition, their fingers raw, their rifle barrels burning hot to the touch. If these echoes of a forgotten past, the fragile line between courage and catastrophe, resonate with you, consider subscribing to join our journey as we continue to unearth the profound, tragic stories that shaped our modern world. For 11 agonizing hours, the small garrison at the drift fought on in the pitch black, knowing that the shadows beyond the barricade held only the cold, unyielding kiss of the assegai.
But the desperate courage of that night at the drift could not halt the relentless, grinding machinery of an empire provoked. By the winter of 1879, the British returned, no longer carrying the complacent arrogance of their first foray, but with a massive, heavily reinforced second column, a slow, terrifying juggernaut of steel and vengeance. The rhythmic, suffocating crunch of thousands of heavy boots blends with the metallic, mechanical clatter of Gatling guns, an unnatural, chilling sound that echoes across the dry grasslands of Zululand. Under the pale, cold sky of July, this mechanical wrath culminates at the very heart of the nation, the royal kraal of Ulundi. We can smell the bitter, choking stench of burning thatch and hear the devastating roar of the flames as the sacred capital is systematically reduced to ash. Black smoke billows upward, a funeral shroud for a dynasty, blotting out the African sun. And in the quiet ruin that follows, deep within the tangled, dusty Thornveld, the final tragedy unfolds. Look closely at his face as he is captured. Defiant, unbowed, King Sechweo stands before his captors. His eyes hold no fear, only a deep, silent majesty and an agonizing grief for a world slipping through his fingers. As he is led away into the cold, silent isolation of exile, his empire is systematically torn apart, carved up by British pens into 13 fractured, warring puppet states. A once great nation, silenced and scattered to the wind.
And in that devastating silence, the very rhythm of Zulu life begins to falter. The wind no longer carries the lowing of vast royal herds across the sun-drenched hills of Zululand, but instead the harsh, metallic clatter of the colonial machine. Forced by the crushing weight of artificial taxes and stolen lands, proud warriors, men who once wore the coveted Isikoko headring, are driven from their ancestral pastures. They descend into the suffocating dark abysses of the Rand gold mines. Here, the sweet scent of dry acacia is replaced by the choking stench of sulfur, dynamite, and damp rock, thousands of feet beneath the earth, their sweat watering a wealth they will never own. Desperation eventually ignites into defiance. In 1906, Chief Bambatha raises a spear against the hated hut tax, a final desperate cry for sovereignty, only to be met by the merciless mechanized thunder of British Maxim guns. The rebellion is brutally, systematically crushed, leaving the soil stained with the blood of those who dared to dream of freedom. Yet, the Zulu spirit is not a thing easily broken by steel or ink. Today, out of the ashes of colonization, the vibrant heartbeat of KwaZulu-Natal rises proud and unbroken. The ancient monarchy survives, no longer as a fractured remnant, but as a living, breathing testament to resilience. In the colourful, thundering dances of the youth, and the enduring pride of a unified nation, the legacy of Shaka lives on, an eternal, brilliant pillar of a modern, free South Africa.